Welcome to Brain VR podcast. We are sitting here with Matt Jardine. We are in Colors of Ostrava Festival in Czech Republic. Matt Jardine is author, podcaster, public speaker, martial artist, entrepreneur, teacher, and the founder of Jardine Karate School. Your previous books include Mo and Lucy, Choices, and The Hardest Path, inspired by his 88 temple pilgrimage of Japan. Matt has also practiced meditation and other Eastern arts for over 25 years. Is there something that I'm missing there?
Well, not so much, but of course we've got the other book, which is How to Be a Buddhist Millionaire.
Yes,
which I guess we'll
yes.
chat about, which followed on from the Hardest Path, but everything else you've got beautifully.
Yeah. So about this book, actually, we're gonna talk a bit more.
Okay.
And other interesting thing that you do is your podcast, which is called The Buddhist Millionaire.
So the podcast was just an extension of the book.
Okay. Yeah.
So
yeah,
it
yeah.
really was just interviewing other people to find out if what they found is what I found.
Yeah.
Because if it was just me, it wouldn't mean anything. But if lots of people found the same things, then maybe it's true. It's not just a 1 in 1,000 type ideal. So the podcast just continues the conversations with other Buddhist millionaires.
I would like to ask you about we like some concept of mental models, if you know what it is. It's like some guiding principles that we can use to guide us in the world, and one of them is more mental model signal versus noise. Because in information world there is a lot of noise going around, and we are very interested into the signal, into the real messages. So what is the signal you are trying to send to the world through your work?
I really love that description of signal versus noise. I love that so much. I will steal that, by the way, and use it. Because you're right. There is so much noise. And in the sort of the self-growth world, the self-development world, there's a lot of kind of, is that real? Did you experience that? Are you just borrowing it from another guy that you listen to? And I always just to move off that, in my martial arts teaching, I love to get the moves down to a core principle. One core principle. I've been in Japanese martial arts for many, many years, and they assume ignorance. So they teach you 20 things as you come in the door. How to stand, how to do your belt. They assume that you've never lived. Well, I don't think, and that's noise, right? Well, I think there's just simple ideas. What's the concept? Okay, don't get hit. That's simple. So I teach in everything I do, whether it's in martial arts or whether we're talking self-growth or money, it's the same thing. What is the forget the rest. We haven't got time for the rest. Let's get to the point. So very much. So in relation to this book, this is the core. The problem is, the majority of people, in my experience, have been 7 out of 10 people. If I said to you, here's £1 million, 24 million crown, a lot of money. Would you tomorrow go and do the work that you currently do? Now, I know you two would. You love it. But 7 out of 10 people will be like, no way, man. No way. Okay. Well, then that's a problem, right? Because in our lives, 1/3 of our life is spent working. 1/3 asleep and 1/3. So you're 2/3 out the window to do 1/3. It's a waste. So this is my core message. I want, for me, firstly, and then other people, if you want to follow that example, it's up to you. I want to get out of bed loving what I do, but that's not enough. I want to make money as well, because I'm not stupid. I understand we've got to pay the bills. This all needs paying for. So they have to match. Can I do what I love and make money doing it? And by me doing it, can I be an example that it can happen? Because trust me, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Is that being a Buddhist millionaire, or
Yes.
is it something else?
No, that is exactly Buddhist millionaireism. So I called it Buddhist Millionaire, of course, because through the noise, you got to catch a market, right? My background is in Buddhism, not formally, but I look at everything. Religion, science, philosophy, And for me, Buddhism sits quite nicely amongst all of those things. I can be a bit weird, and that works. I can be sciencey, that works, and so it works, right? So that's fine. So the Buddhist part was really just symbolizes meaning. Do you have a life that is meaningful to you mainly, and then to others? So that's the Buddhist part. And the millionaire is just, can you also make money? Think of a spectrum, right? 1 to 10. At 1, right down, we have the unhappy poet. I love my work. I'm in tune with the universe. I make no money. Okay? That's no good. Then we have the other end, the rich banker, making lots of money, not necessarily meaningful. A Buddhist millionaire is in the middle. Can we do what we love and be profitable? Now, of course, lots of people are both Buddhist millionaires, but you don't have to be a Buddhist millionaire.
Can you describe more the Buddhist part, how it specifically sits in this modern Western world of money and careers? Could you describe a bit more?
Okay, so I have to go backwards slightly to set some context. So 2007, I was, there was nothing wrong, there was nothing right. It was all a bit average. Is there more to life? I wanted to do other things, but I had to pay the bills. Is there more to life? At some point, I think we all ask those questions, and I asked that question. And I had just finished Paulo Coelho, who's the author of The Alchemist. His first book is called The Pilgrimage. He did the Santiago, the Camino. And when I finished that book, I knew I wanted to do a pilgrimage. But I didn't want to do the Camino. For me, with my links to Japan, I thought, okay, I'll go to Japan. So their big pilgrimage is called the Hachijuhachi, the 88 Temple. So my point, I went. Long story short, in 30 days, I walked 1,400 kilometers visiting 88 temples. So it's a circumference of Shikoku. And the idea of pilgrimage, especially a circular pilgrimage, is they say that you live your life, the macrocosm of your life, in microcosm in the pilgrimage. So for example, however long you're on this planet, 80, 90, 100 years, you live in the 30 days because you'll see ups and downs, ins and outs. You'll see who you are just compacted. Every pilgrim then leaves the pilgrimage with their own, I don't know, life lessons. I don't like that word, but we'll do it. Life lessons that they can then go, okay, I see that about myself, or I've learned that about myself, and so then when I came back with these lessons, that became my first book, The Hardest Path. When I came back, of course, I'm feeling happy and lifted, and this Buddhist meditation, yeah, great. But there's still bills come through the door. My children still need to be fed. So what now? So then I started to ask, naturally, can I use these same lessons and apply them to other areas of my life? Relationships, for example, work, classically. And the Buddhists call this coming down from the mountain. There's no good being in a cave or on a pilgrimage and you go, look, I've touched the source of all things, and it stays there. It's only useful if you can come back and translate it into your day-to-day world, which is I call urban pilgrimage. So every day then, every journey becomes an extension of that pilgrimage.
I think this is the crucial part actually, because we can say a lot of words here, and we both do podcasts, we ourselves have this podcast, Czech podcast as well, and there are still so many words, but when it comes down to it, it's about doing the things that we talk about actually, living the things, like what you do 80% of the time, day by day basis. So I'm really interested in, first of all, two things, like what were the biggest lessons that you got from there? What were the principles, the thoughts that transformed your life? And then how to actually transfer them into your daily life. So maybe first, what are the most important principles and lessons from the pilgrimage?
It's really important, and this is, it's really simple. And I will go back to the pilgrimage because it's just a metaphor for life. I'd use the pilgrimage example, but you could use the example for your podcast, for me writing a book. It's one of the same thing. And it starts with this. At some point, you have to choose what is the thing you're going to do. Like, for example, I decided I am going to do the pilgrimage. Now that sounds like so simple, it's ridiculous. But if you ask people in life, what do you want? It is the single most crushing question for people, because a lot of people look at you and go, I don't know. And therein is your problem. You don't walk onto a tennis court not knowing the rules. You know, you don't walk into a cage fight not knowing the rules, and it's the same with life. But they don't know, and this coming often because we're taught that our dreams or our passions are hobbies. That's a very discrediting thing. No, that's a hobby. Whoa, hang on, that's my life. So we're almost discouraged from dreaming, right? And in that means a lot of people do not know what they want. So how on earth can you expect to get it? We don't even know where we start. So how on earth can we know where we're going?
Well, this brings up another question. What to want? Like, what do I want to want? Like, that's such a difficult question that actually goes a little bit to the existential question. Like, what's meaningful here?
Yes.
What to do?
Yes.
And I think you've said it, and we also come down to, you know, it's easy to go to this, you know, I'm gonna change the world, I'm gonna save the world and help the world in some way, in some big way. You know, we are, you know, idealists and stuff like that. We want to do big things. But I think that's putting a pressure on us, and today's world...
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. It's just something abstract in the heaven, basically. But we live in a world where there are a lot of pressures on us, and sometimes this might lead to frustration, because, okay, what is it actually? Like, there's so many steps to get there. So we came down to some simple thought and principles, and I think you already mentioned it. Find what's meaningful to you.
Yes.
When it's probably not hurting the environment you are in, right?
Exactly.
It should be like also helpful a little bit, maybe to some people around you. So is that something that we can do when we start? Because I don't think there is, you know, it's really hard to choose what to want, what to do and stuff like that. So maybe it is something that we have to go and stay with and look for insight. Is that something that pilgrimage brings?
A perfect question, and it is down to that. A big part of the book is talking about finding out what you want. Because as I say, remember, this is nothing too big or existential. We've just lost the ability to think what we want. So it's like a muscle. You go to the gym, you do your bicep curls, and that builds muscle. Concentrating on what you want is the same thing. It's a mental skill. It's a practical, mental, doable skill. You don't have to be in yoga pants. You don't have to have incense. It's a workable skill, right? So you must practice that. And then, of course, that might take a while. When you start asking what do you want, there'll be barrier. If you've never practiced that could take a while. Fine. It could take 6 months. It could take a year. There is no rush. But I have discovered, it's not my discovery, I've just realized, there is an inbuilt navigation system in us, which is our emotions. When you think of something that you like to do, now, we could explain this in science, or we could explain it in religion or philosophy. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. There's a system. When you think of something you love to do, people light up. Their eyes light up, they sit straighter, they maybe speak louder. A scientist will tell me what's going on with my cortisol. A religious leader that would say that I'm connected to God. I don't care. But you'll know that feels good. For me personally, I feel it most obviously in my stomach. Viscerally, when something excites me, I feel it in my stomach. And that's how I make most of my decisions now. That's how I made my decision to come here. When I met you, I liked you both. Do you want to be on the podcast? I felt it. Yes. If I don't feel it, no. And then the contrast is if you sit and think about stuff you don't want to do, like for me, I mentioned this in my talk, Excel spreadsheets, you know, numbers. I'm rubbish at numbers. So if you put me in a world where I have to do numbers, I'm rubbish. But my friend Nikki loves numbers. So it's not a right or wrong thing. And I just wanted to, so we can trust our emotions. And that's not a weird thing, that's a science-based thing. But I do want to touch on another thing, which is often overlooked, right? I don't think, whatever the thing that allows us to be who we want to be, and I don't know what that is, right? I don't think it cares. It just wants you to create. So, and a lot of people don't want to hear this, but you can choose bad stuff and be successful at it, and that's okay. Now, it's not okay for me, but that's okay. And history is littered with people doing bad stuff successfully. So then my question is, here we go. So then is the we'll call it the universe. I don't like the term, but let's do that for now, right? Until I have a better idea. Is the nature of it good, bad, or indifferent? Now, you'd argue the fact that we're sitting here, even having this conversation, means it has to be, by definition, good, or at least moving forwards. Because if it was indifferent or bad, there'd be no movement. We couldn't be here. So the universe is an evolutionary movement. It doesn't care how you move. So then morals are not necessarily a set thing. What's right for you is not right for you or for me, which brings us a moral problem, right?
Yeah. Okay, this is important. And as you came up with this question, it doesn't necessarily mean that I feel great. I'm going to pursue this thing and I'm going to be great at it. It doesn't mean that it's not, I don't know, for some psychopaths, it might be killing. It doesn't mean it's not bad.
Yeah.
So for me, there are two concepts that connect it for me, because I think that, yes, morals are relative. Mm-hmm. They are set by society and stuff like that. Thousands of years ago, slaves were okay. Today, they're not. But that's a probably good thing, right?
Yes.
As our society would say. I think it is, and I think we have some things that might help us to do good decisions, even in the relative sense, kind of. And it's another concept, which is, you said there is kind of an emotional compass. But then we can use compass of a reason, which for us is another mental model. It's value compass.
Okay, yep.
So you basically, you learn from, philosophy, from history and tradition of reason.
Yep.
What's probably better idea than some other idea and better value, and what feels most close to you, and it is on the good side, relatively at least. For example, openness versus closeness. So I choose openness, and that's really high on my value compass, and I'm gonna go there. Does this thing that I do, that I think, that I believe, does it open me up to the world? If yeah, so that might be something, or not being dogmatic, another thing which we really love.
Yeah.
So I think you can, kind of put together this emotional compass and this compass of reason, this value compass.
Absolutely. But the compass of reason, though, and then value systems, I think in the end, don't they only come because they lead to a result? So I only will pick a value if it leads to me meeting, initially, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Right? If it meets that goal, which is me staying on the planet long enough to survive, job done. Then I can start to trust the navigation, the body navigation as well. So then the question is then, okay, is there a bigger force or not? And that's the point. I have no idea. There are bigger, better brains than mine. Still don't know. So it's then us kind of going, well, how can I, and this is very Buddhist, how can I sit in the middle of not knowing or choosing my right or wrong, or not having my parents go, that's right, that's wrong. I now am responsible. That's a big weight on your shoulders, but it's a weight that we must all take if we're to be functional, I think, developed human beings.
You went into this meta level, as you said, as the universe of you, kind of. I totally agree with you in that view, but we can, I think, talk about it a little bit later, further in the podcast, on some nuances in that view.
Sure. Yeah.
I would like to continue this conversation and go back to the meaning, to how to develop this sense of meaning that you are doing what you love, that it's like really obvious that you love making coffee, that you are a really good barista, Tom here, like you sense it from him. Yeah. But how can you get there? And that's what I would like to ask you, is the concept like of everywhere nowhere. Can you talk more about this?
Okay, that's a good question. Everywhere nowhere is my description for that sort of insipid grey. There's not a big problem. You haven't been run over by a bus. You're not being shipped to hospital, fix his leg, but there's something not right. My shiatsu teacher calls it being half healthy. You're not ill, so there's no treatment, but you're not right. Yeah? And there's lots of research now to say that the kind of the degenerative diseases are from this half healthy, this kind of low cortisol draining, that we're sort of getting ill from just not being right. And now with mental health, 1 in 4 people suffering mental health, sort of an unchallenged, unhappy, it's not serious.
It's a languishing.
Languishing. That's a beautiful word. Absolutely right. And that languishing. So even beyond living your dream, blah, 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 but just the sort of that kind of insipid languishing that doesn't do anything. It's just like a slow death, right? You're sort of, if you are in soccer terms, you put all of your men on the goal line. You're not playing to win. You're not playing at all. You're just hoping no one gets the ball in. So then you go, okay, on one level, I just don't want to live like that because it's boring. Fine. On another level, nothing moves, nothing grows, everything slows and languishes. That's a beautiful, beautiful word. And that's very much a problem. So we then must then challenge ourselves. No. We mustn't do anything. You do what you like. I must, for my own happiness, challenge constantly. Am I happy doing what I'm doing? Can I tell you a quick story? When I went from tennis, so you'll see a lot of career changes for me. Get to the height, leave it, move on. So when I went from tennis, I went to study. So in martial arts, the idea is you should be able to heal what you break. And I've always been fascinated by Oriental medicine. The idea of, the yin-yang symbol. I love that idea, philosophically, from a religious point of view, from a healing point of view. Because in Chinese medicine, we're not talking herbs, I'm talking acupuncture particularly. In Chinese medicine, the health is relative. You said that earlier, like morals are relative. It isn't, Cartesian theory is, this is broken, cut it out, or give it pills. In Oriental medicine, it's more nuanced. It's only black in relation to white, hence the symbol, right? You've got a black and white paisley with white and black dots in each other. So it's relative, okay? Now, I very much like that idea because then you start to see, well, life itself is nuanced. There's no set. So I started studying shiatsu to understand that, right? And then to work on it. And my teacher would always say, half healthy is the thing that will kill you. Half healthy. So I moved into that. Anyway, my point. I treated one guy, Jim. He was the husband of my Japanese teacher. I was studying Japanese. And he was a very successful businessman. They used to bring him into failing companies to troubleshoot, and we're talking not little companies like mine, big companies. And he'd come in and fix it. And he'd say to me, I'd go to his house, how's your new shiatsu business, Matt? It's good, Jim. Great. I'm loving it. Fine. And he doesn't want that stuff. He said, no. How many clients have you got? No, Jim, it's good. Someone called me earlier. I've got to Matt, put a pad on the paper, a pen. Write down how many clients have you got? 5. So I've gone from being, tennis coach to the royal family, making the money, to 5 shiatsu clients at £40 an hour, and I'm walking around London. So no money. And I was ashamed. I didn't want to admit it. And he said, there's no shame. But before we know where you're going, you have to firstly be honest with where you are. If you're making £100 a week, you're making £100 a week. But how am I going to help you if we just talk in this, it's going okay, I love it, let's get some numbers on there. It's good that you love it, but let's get some numbers. So it's important that we acknowledge, where are you? Podcast, how many viewers? 2. Okay. Okay, fine. I wish I was Logan Paul. I'm not. We've got 2 viewers. One's my mother, one's my father. Fine. But it's got to start there, because if we move away from the esoteric into the more problem solving, I think the brain is a problem solving machine, or machine, whatever. It's a problem solver. But give it a problem. The problem is 2 viewers. Fine. Well, how do we get to 10 by, I don't know, next week or whatever? Now we start to call what I say drawing your line in the sand, or in the book I call it start from where you are. But do you know where you are? And that takes honesty. Start from where you are, and then you can start to go, I don't want to be here. I don't want 2 viewers or 4 clients. I want 40 clients. Now, I'm not saying that will come tomorrow, but you've got to be honest with where you are, so that the contrast is, I don't want to be here, I want to be there. Now we've got that yin-yang balance, right? Now we start to see, that's where I start. In the cage, when you're cage fighting, I know where the start is. When I go through the doors, when they lock it and the ref says, go, now I know we're ready to go. It's the same with work, life, relationships, everything.
It really reminded me of toxic positivity, that we are talking about signal versus noise.
Yes.
And I think like that telling myself that I'm okay and I'm always positive and optimistic about things that are not going well is like bringing more noise to the house.
I cannot agree more. Toxic. I don't call it toxic. What did you call it? Toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity.
I call it spiritual porn. that weird, creepy, like when I go to, I've read all these weird books, right? Trust me, I've read everything from and there's been some good stuff, but some weird, and they're always in the corner of a bookshop, aren't they? Spiritual self-help books, and I'm almost ashamed to be picking one off and when my agent said, where do you want this? I was like, please don't put it in the spiritual porn section, because it has a kind of a weird, just like you say, be happy. No. Another example. We have a big children's section to our school, right? My wife is a teacher, and I've had a big children's program. I love martial arts for self-development, not for the fighting, for self-development. Anyway, my point. And children will all come out, Sensei Matt, that's what they call a crumb. Joe has called me an idiot. Now, rather than turn to Joe and say, Joe, don't say that, you're supposed to, I say to this boy, are you an idiot? So the first reaction is, a face that goes, that's not what I was looking for. But I'm like, no, seriously, because we need some practice, right? If you'd broken your finger, I can get on with it, but I need to know, are you an idiot? If you're not, then it doesn't matter what Joe's saying. And if you are, and you're comfy with being an idiot, fine. And if you're not comfy with it, let's look at some tactics to not be an idiot. But my point is, be honest with where you are. Arm yourself with the material. There's no point in going, oh, Joe, don't be me. Oh, you're not an idiot. You're lovely. That doesn't help anybody. And now we start to give them responsibility. What do you want to be? Do you want to be the idiot? Do you want to take no notice of a guy who doesn't know you? And that is why I think Jim who told me it's the same thing. Where are you? Be honest. Be really honest, which is hard. I'm not going to say, you don't want to admit you've got 4 clients. What are you talking about? Be honest. And now we've got some work we can do.
This is beautiful, because it feels like a lot of the times we can say, okay, what are the steps that we can do? What are the things? What are the principles? What are the advices what we can do in our life? But those advices sometimes left out our circumstances, which kind of push us in, in a field where it's really maybe or even sometimes impossible to take that advice. Because first you have to create a space where you have a tendency to have an ability to response ability, which Frederick Imbo, it's such a nice context. We've talked with him here, and he introduced us to this, response ability.
That is it. Problem solving, responsibility, that's absolutely perfect.
So for me, it's not about, okay, what are the advices? For me, it's, okay, how to create the space for us to be able to take that advice and put it into work. And I think we are going really slowly, step by step here. I really like it, how it makes sense. For me, it's so meaningful what we are talking about right here. So how to create this space in our life?
The reason I've run out of words is because I cannot agree with this more. So let me go back to my career before tennis. You heard of my talk. I wanted to be a pro tennis player. I wasn't a great player. I was quite good, but I was a much better coach, and found out that coaching...
You were the best player we've never heard of.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder.
That was your joke, sorry, I kind of stole it.
but as I found out, because I needed to pay because I didn't have big sponsors, so I would pay by coaching. But anyway, my point is, I kind of found out I love teaching. Fine. My point. In my final teaching exams, and they're big, right? Big teaching exams, the question was, what comes first? This is the final question. Technique or tactic? So I go around the room, blah, 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 blah. Everyone's going, you've got to get the technique. Well, tennis is a very technical sport, right? Like golf, tennis. And I said, tactic. The room fell silent, like Matt's dropped the ball. You know, what has he done? He's just double faulted. He's done well in these. And the instructor said, "You're the only one to get it right." Of course. Tactic is the end game. Technique fits the tactic. Now, in that time, I don't know if you remember, I mean, you guys are young, right? But Pete Sampras was the big server, right? Big American server. And the Lawn Tennis Association, so the England Tennis Association, were languishing in their tennis stars, right? I think, Fred Perry was our last one. Anyway, they end up spending loads and loads of money, investing money, basically breaking down Pete Sampras's serve, Pete Sampras's technique, and trying to put it on every other person. Of course, it doesn't work. Sampras is not working on his technique. He's working on making sure the ball goes down the line so the other guy can't get it. Now, the point from then on, I had in my head what I call the holy grail of teaching, which is teaching without teaching. In the martial arts, now we fast forward however many years, in the martial arts, their biggest crime is, as I said earlier, is teaching all the steps, assuming ignorance. And actually, what you want to do is assume that we have some competency. So to ask your question, how do we kind of get these skills out of us? Well, the teacher actually isn't there to give, in my view, any skills at all. It's to create the environment whereby the student cannot not learn. Let me just play that back in my head to do that. Cannot not learn. Now, these
are the circumstances in our life as well.
And Sherry and I, my wife and I, talk about this all the time as educators, because the move in early years education is towards what we call game-based play or experiential learning. At the moment, we're in an Arabic country. We live in an Arabic country, and they're still very much, when they teach Arabic, it's still very much like Dickensian English. You follow. Doesn't work at all, because we're like 60 years on. But you put them in that environment where they learn for themselves. So let me use a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu example, because it makes sense to me. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a grappling art which is supposed to, it looks quite complicated. And when you look at it, when you go to a lesson, you're like, I literally have no idea what's going on. I don't even know how that arm goes there and that leg goes there. And you're taught lots of steps, which you will absolutely forget by the time you've reached the changing rooms. And therefore progress is quite slow. When I started teaching Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm not claiming to be a superstar, this is just an example for this, right? I started to think of this effortless teaching. Right, well, how can we make sure the lowest common denominator, as in the least able, how can we make sure that even they get the lesson? And I call it playing the game first. So as in football and rugby, you don't learn to play first. This is how we learn sports, right? We go outside, we kick a ball around until our mum says, "Can you come in, please, and have some tea?" And then we come in. We may go to football camp and learn to pass because we weren't very good, but that's how we learn. But in a lot of things, and in life, and in education, they teach you. So you're not playing the game. Now that's rubbish for two reasons. One, we only want to play. Two, it's very slow to teach steps before they're relative to what we're doing. So here's my point. So in Jiu-Jitsu, I make sure that my guys can fight within the first 3 lessons. They might be rubbish, and they are rubbish, but they know the game. So now when we have a technique, it fits the need that they have found. Because they say, "Oh, Matt, I can't do this." I'll show you this. And because it's related to what is their problem, they remember it every time. Whereas if I'd started on this technical lesson that fits into nothing, it doesn't mean anything. Why would my brain make the space for something that doesn't mean anything? So then our role as educators, whether that be podcasters or authors or actual educators, is to create an environment where despite the person, they get better. So you play the game.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said is so profound, and I'm gonna just go back to what we came from, which is brain, neuroscience, and stuff like that. And this is so important because your brain fits into an environment, and
neuroplasticity,
right? As well. And you need to have associations. If it's relatable, which is basically you don't play anything which you can't play.
Yeah.
So you have to relate to something. Oh, my friend plays. Okay, I'm gonna play. I have food and there's ball. I can play. I can kick the ball, and then you go on and go on and go on. So this is actually so profound. It goes really deep And I love it. I have so many things to add.
Can I just tell you where that came from? So a good friend of mine who I did karate with, one of his students was doing a doctorate. It may or may not, but a high level, what that may be. He was he's one of the UK's leading neurologists, right? And he did this study. At that point, they were studying work in Parkinson's. Okay, and the kind of hypothesis was: is the myelin sheath in high-level martial artists different from other people? Was the point. So the high-level black belts, me and a few others, went in over a few weeks into Charing Cross Hospital. And we punched and kicked them. Anyway, long and short, yes, it's more evolved in martial arts.
It's just thicker, maybe.
Thicker, exactly.
Because,
so the connectivity is better.
Yeah. Myelin sheath is basically just isolation
it's kind
for
of
the
coating around
electricity.
The wire, isn't it? Sort of stuff.
For the electricity to go faster and longer distance. So,
So that's what he said. So then I started with him creating what we called martial smarts. So a brain development program for young children that was based around using. So back up. Sorry, I missed a bit. I then started to notice that where Sherry taught at a school, they had the children with special needs. They'd have an occupational therapist come in, and I taught the karate club there afternoons. And she would often be in before me, and occasionally she'd leave her manual, or I'd just be there early and see the work she was doing, right? And I saw this, bilateral crossing the center line, crawling, all the different exercises they do to stimulate the brain. And I was like, a lot of those are karate or martial arts. It's the same up, down, left, right, stimulating the brain, crawling, that sort of stuff. And the children never wanted to be in this special class because they felt, something was wrong with them. So I started to go, well, what about if you come to my martial arts class? You won't know that we're working on you. You will have no idea. For you, we're working towards your red belt. We're doing the same stuff. You don't feel like there's something wrong with you, which there isn't, but we all have that, right? And you're getting the same benefits. So that program became the Martial Smarts Development Program, which we did with 3 to 6, 7-year-olds. Now, not all moves work. I then went on to study it, and not all moves work. Of course, cognitive function, isn't it? It's all that area, right? So some works didn't work. The overly competitive exercises would be detrimental, so that didn't work. We did a load of study, and that program has been running and is hugely successful. So Sherry then noticed that the changes in their class behavior and fine motor skills, as well as grown motor skills, were brilliant. And I haven't got round to it, but I still want to document that formally. It was just too much within my realm for me to do professionally, but anecdotally we saw massive difference. And then I had people calling me saying, my child's got ADHD, can you help? Yep. And I used to teach them meditation. We'd have kids who couldn't sit still for seconds. I've got them on video sitting still for 2 minutes like this. I mean, there's no magic. We work towards it, but it works.
Yeah, it's just for kids, meditation is actually some state that they would go in normally without many distractions, and if maybe parents and their environment maybe let them. Anaka Harris, which is wife of Sam Harris, famous philosopher, neuroscientist, his Waking Up podcast. They talk about it together. It's a brilliant idea, and brilliant idea of yours. Martial Smarts. It's so cool. I love it so much.
Brain development for children.
I had no idea.
And often, but just as you say, it's mostly boundary setting. Boundary setting. Which is where the traditional martial arts can be useful. So the child sit still for 30 seconds. This is no question. I am the teacher. So you set strong boundaries. And just as you say, put them in the environment where there's no other option. Boom. And we have had success over the years, time and time again. So now we develop it, play the game, set the boundaries, and the growth is amazing. Now I just love to watch people grow, because you just see, that's amazing. And they go, oh, it's you're a brilliant guy. It's nothing to do with me. It's nothing to do with me. I did pick the environment for you to play in, right? Fine. But that's your brain. That's the magic. Whatever we say, wherever we say that brain will come from, I don't even care. That's your magic. I've just put you in the container to play, right? And it just, I find it so exciting.
That's really beautiful. I love the gamification part in that, because like as we said, the environment is the strongest, maybe like the only stimuli from which your brain can learn, and your brain has to know that something is important to you, something that you can
meaning,
relate
your own
to.
personal meaning, isn't it?
You get meaning through your senses.
Yes.
You've got sense
Yes.
of the world. That's really beautiful. And to put some like theoretical informations inside your embodied cognition that you can really use in the future, that your brain learned that there is some way of how to solving some problem, is much harder than like learn it by experience.
Yep.
So I really love Marshall Smart's.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So now the question is, okay, how to become your own teacher? Because the question was how to build up this field where this is going to happen. So are there some things like, I don't know, writing, meditating on it, go into that meta view where I set the tactic for me, where I set some things that I want to do maybe that will take time, but it will go slowly but surely, and I will make progress. Can we do something like that?
That's a great question. I think we have to acknowledge first that responsibility is a real thing. That has to happen. I don't like those big general terms, but let's use it for now. We've been kind of pushed toward that. This is what we need you to do. So we need to go, actually, my life, my brain, my neuroplasticity is my responsibility. And once I understand that's a real thing, I already think that's that cool where you are. It's your life. That's a lot on my shoulders. Yeah. Yeah, it is. But I'm just giving you the information. Yes, it's your life. Do what you like. So now once we kind of value that responsibility and responsibility, we then start to go, okay, well, I know where the line is. Then I think we're much more motivated now because we know it's a real thing. Mum's not going to give it to me. Dad's not going to give it to me. It's my life. So now we know it's a real thing. I think we're much more motivated to start looking for the game ourselves. Now, there will be gaps in information, and just to kind of circle right back to the pilgrimage, right? To use that simple metaphor stuff for my simple brain. But I wrote a chapter in there called "When the Student is Ready, the Teacher Appears." Because there will be gaps in your information. We'll find out with my jiu-jitsu guys that you're like, it's not just free play. I'm not suggesting we go outside and play. It's free play with a purpose. You go outside to find out that your passing skills are rubbish. Now come back and I'll help you. So it's not just bland. So my point there is, okay, they'll go away and there will be gaps in knowledge, and that's where educators can go, okay, well, I can use the inside of your foot, or then that's fine. But what I found is when someone asks a question that fits their gap, the retention of information is almost immediate. Like, I'm learning Arabic at the moment, and when there are words that I need to remember for my life, I remember them. When we're talking about, Fred's lost his umbrella in the station, I'm like, what does that even mean? But when I need to know shukran and, khalas, because I need it for my lesson, I remember it. Mm-hmm. So there will be gaps in your knowledge, and then educators can come in, or listen to this podcast, they tell you how to do that. Fine. And that's a much better use of time as well, right? We're not in the noise. We're in the get to the point. Get to the point.
Wow. Okay, so I have... This is perfect, because now we've kind of defined the first step. Christoph said a few minutes earlier that you have to find, the brain has to find what's important. The whole organism has to find what's important. Set the boundaries, as you've said. Well, we just kind of find out what's important right now. And it's our life. It's our subjectivity. It's our subjective experience. And as you've said, that's a lot of responsibility. Yes, it is.
It's a big deal.
But that's really the most important thing here. Yes. And people sometimes, tend to give themselves, they would, shatter themselves for the world. And, you are still the most important thing. So first, you have to be selfish, to be selfless.
I completely agree with that.
Yes.
Absolutely agree with that.
So this is like... few things, and then when we go down, when someone needs it with more of factual thinking, we come down to realization that our subjectivity, our subjective experience is the only thing that we will ever have in our life, that we can ever experience. Because if it wasn't subjective, if it was you and me together or something, it would be something else than subjective.
Absolutely.
So I have my whole life, I have this point of view, and however I'm gonna feel in my life, I'm gonna feel it. I am gonna feel it myself. So I think we better take care of it, and I think that's the value, like that's setting the values.
You were talking from a science point of view, right? Brain science. But let me just back up because this is important. Sorry to interrupt you before I forgot it, because this is really important. And it freaked me out when I first started meditating when I was 17, right? The first lesson is called the corpse, and they get you to reflect on your death.
Yes.
So the kind of decaying with the point of appreciating this gift, going, this is your responsibility, man. You're going to decay, you're going to die, go for it. So we're kind of saying that, which is why I like Buddhism. It works in a metaphor I can understand. I'm a novelist, so I like that stuff. But it's the same science, really. It's the same kind of thing. And then you look back at the kind of a lot of in Hinduism, a lot of thinking, a lot of Buddhism. There are some really profound physics, I would say, in some of those things, just may said a little bit differently, and that's why Buddhism sits quite nicely for me.
And Stoicism, memento mori.
Stoicism as well, yes.
I just wanted to comment: make the death count. Make your death count.
Absolutely.
By living your life fully.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because we don't then have to get into the sort of, is there life after death to make this one. If there is, happy days. I'll see you up there. Get the coffees in, right? Fine. But whether or not, I don't know, but that doesn't mean we can't take responsibility. But as Jim said, as I said, call your start line, which is be responsible. Are you being annoying? Yes, well, fine. Do you want to carry on being annoying or not? It's up to you. There's your responsibility, which leads to your responsibility. I love that. I'm taking that all day.
I love all the practical philosophical tools that we are exploring right now. And I would like to switch a little bit to a different topic, because the book is called Buddhist Millionaire, and I would like to talk about money now. So tell us, please.
Here we go. Let's get in there.
About the money myth. What is it?
So the money myth is another handing over of thinking to someone else. Initially our parents, through our society, which is the money myth. Go to school, go to college, go to university. Why? To get a good job. We'll follow that track. Just one more. Why? To make money. Oh, okay. Pretty much. Nowhere. And if you ever said, I'm not going in today because I want to stay home and I don't know, play the guitar. No, that's for the weekend. School. Now, if we follow that track logically, if we call the unsaid, you know the phrase elephant in the room, if we actually say what's being said, and I'm going to use it in my language because I like the metaphor, we are basically saying that money is God. Money is the thing, right? Fine, because that's what we're all driven towards, right? Most people wouldn't even question that. Money is the thing, because without it you'd die. Well, let's question that, because what happened before money? And in the book, I speak to an economist, and we spoke about that. Let's imagine the cowboy eras where there was no finance. What did we do? Well, we walked down to the river and got water. We killed a rabbit. We, spoke to someone who might kill a rat. Whatever it may be. I'm not suggesting it's easy, and I'm not suggesting that our modern life is not more convenient, but it ain't money. And Native American, there's that beautiful saying that only after the last fish has gone, the last river has been poisoned, etc., will you find that money cannot be eaten. And I was like, that's true. That's really true. So then you have to say, okay, right, so we agree that money then is just a convenient symbol. Fine. Well, a symbol for what? Well, for invisible currencies. Well, what are invisible currencies? Hunting, fishing, communicating. All the things that are on Maslow's energy, all the things on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Just because there's no money doesn't mean they're not they're the same thing. And he covers all the way up to spiritual and satisfaction, etc., as well as the housing, right? That's all the same thing. But we start to go, oh, I would have those things even if I had no money. So then okay, so money is a symbol, fine, so that's not got no. All right, so then what is the source of the invisible currencies? Well, I don't know. Who can know? You guys will call it something different to what and does it even matter? Which, circling back to the pilgrimage then, is where you start to see that tested. Remember, the whole point of pilgrimage is to see your life lived in microcosm so you can see it up front. So it's not around the noise. You're quiet enough to see what's going on. And then you start to see when you're busy, you don't see the connections because you're not really thinking about them. But when you only are seeing your life in microcosm, you see the connections. You see I'm really hungry, thought, intention, really would like to eat, car stops, would you like some food? Yeah. When you're quiet, you go, whoa, what was that? Or, I really need a wee. I haven't seen a toilet forever, toilet shows, or whatever it may be. Now, we could speak, 20 different guests will tell you what's doing that. God's given you the gifts. Cognitive bias is, whatever it may be. I don't know. All I needed to know, I was hungry, something appeared. And that quiet time is you see the connections because the noise for that 30 days is gone. So you go, whoa, those things are connected. Now, I don't know why. I just know that they exist and they can be applied to other things.
So we are kind of back here to signal, because you're trying to get rid of the noise and really like why I need money, what for, what is my aim in life. That's nice.
Yeah, we're back in that signal place that money is only representative. But what if money wasn't on the go? There is a very real risk that all money will fall off the planet at some point with cryptos, right? So we will be actually having this situation. We'll be back to the cowboy plains where it was just, we have to find another way. And now we're back into brain science where, as problem solvers, we'll work it out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a longer walk to the river, and I'd rather not. Okay, well, how we make that more interesting? Well, I'll take a friend with me to talk on the way. We will find other problems to the solution, and the circle starts again. Then at some point we'll be like, I can't be bothered. Let's make shells. Can you bring some shells so I can give it? It'll start again, and then we get this breath. I think society will always come and go in the same way, a little bit like the lungs breathing. Breathe in, breathe out. And I think we'll see this again in 100, 150, 200 years' time. There'll be 3 other guys speaking on another, I don't know what it'll be called then, a Z-cast, but doing the same conversation. It's an in-breath, out-breath. And I think the body kind of represents that, as does our brain, as does all the religions and the philosophies, however we all explain it.
Yes, and we can actually see it in countries that where the inflation went out of the hand, because people are intuitively going back to the trading market. They are trading things and animals and their products, and they are becoming independent on the automated market that was settled before. It's really interesting.
But doesn't it bring us back to responsibility? We have the responsibility to question the things we no longer question. Who questions money? Who sits there and going, hang on a minute, money's not real. Money's an idea that we agree on, which again, because of the responsibility, and I hate to keep using the term, but I love it so much, because we take responsibility for that thought, which we hadn't questioned, that had been passed on from generation to generation, well, since probably Second World War, when it was so finely held onto since our grandparents and parents. Then we go, I'm going to increase my responsibility through my invisible currencies. The game changes, but it's no less a game.
Yeah. We think that one of our biggest fears, and also where we look for our value, is in society. So we have a lot of like social status biases and everything.
A lot of
research is done on that. Can you talk a little bit about social status myth and how to approach it from within?
Let's be honest, right? Social status matters to us all. No one likes being the last pick. That does something to our souls, right? It does something to our... When I was young, I always had I had a bit of a hang-up about, do you like me, do you not like... It's a bit weird thinking about it now. Now I could care less. But it was a real thing. So to ignore that like the kid. Are you annoying? Yes. So, fine.
Yeah.
You've got to be honest, right? Social status does matter. It's not enough to go, just believe in yourself. You are a one man amongst rubbish. And if we go on to Maslow's thing, we need that to work. But we're back to responsibility. If you hand too much of it over to that person, now it moves away from status into kind of, which just fits our need. I've hurt my leg, can you go and get my rabbit for me? Or I've hurt my knee, can you go and get my water? When it fits that need, now it becomes, oh, do you like me? Can you get my rabbit? It's a different, it hasn't fit its needs. So we're back to, okay, how can I develop that? And I think, so for me, what has made a big difference is the meditation, is the quieting the noise. Because when I quiet the noise, I get a chance to get back to myself and realize that that isn't correct. That is not correct. I was going to say that I'm powerful. No, that I am tapped into the power as much as everyone else. So I can kind of use that as well. So I go, all right, well, I've hurt my knee. I might need you to go and kill my rabbit because I've run out of money, right? But equally, I'm still pretty powerful. I can do something else. So it's important to understand that, yes, we need people. Buddhism talks about the whole interconnectedness. We need people, but we also have to then touch in on ourselves and realize that we are those people too. We are part of that interconnected link, an integral part.
Yeah, just remember that you're part of the nature. Remember to the nature.
Yeah, you're no less, you're no more, but you are, I like that, yeah, you're no less, but you're no more, you are part of the web. And again, we're back into the Buddhist terminology, the interconnected web, Shiva's Pearl, I think it's called. Maybe, don't quote me on that, it may or may not be correct. But that whole idea that one connects the other. And then we come full circle then, that if you're in that web, you have a responsibility to yourself and to the other people. We're back again in the same place. And isn't that how brain chemistry works? It's all linked and fired. This supports this supports, boom, 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 boom.
You just described the idea behind name of our show.
Oh.
It's called Brain VR, and it's about that we realized first it was brain you are, but then we realized, oh, we are not alone in this world. We are actually brains connected in a network. And there is no any esoteric idea behind it. It's just that I am now imprinted in your brain, and not people often think that it's just psychological. But actually it's physical.
Actually synaptic, is it?
It's, yeah. Whatever you experience, there's physical change in your brain. And whatever listeners hear right now, it's going to be with them forever. They don't have to remember it, but there is something
embedded.
Physical that happened there in the brain.
Yeah.
And for me, this is such a beautiful idea, because right now, you can imagine that, your brain has activity that goes to your mouth, to your muscles, you say something.
Yeah.
That thing, what you say, is transferred through waves in space to my eardrum, and that eardrum vibrates and activates my neuronal cells.
It's amazing.
So it's basically, there's just interface, but it's basically your neurons activating my neurons. And what's happening with listeners? My neurons and your neurons and Christoph's neurons, they are activating through this microphone and internet and everything. They're activating their neurons as well. So we are this huge interconnected web of brains, and we come up with things together. And what I love about these conversations, this is really profound for me, and what I love about it is that what I think during these conversations, I wouldn't be able to think otherwise. It's collective intelligence in a process.
But the Buddhists have a term for it. I don't know if you have it in brain science, but they call it interdependence. Which is the same thing? Yes. Which is, that's one of the first lessons that I need. They call that a butterfly's wings fluttering in Yucatan affects the something in Boston.
And butterfly effect.
Whatever it may be. It's that whole kind of idea. And I again, it doesn't matter how you describe it. But here's the thing. I've thought about this a lot. I tried to, at one point when I was working with Peter Bain, I really looked into neuroscience, but it's just too big for me. I'm not an academic brain. My understanding happens much more metaphorically, but I did a load of research and for Marshall Smart. Anyway, So I started to do this brain experiment. So you've just said we've got to the web, right? And I did it in my talk where I get people to look at their hand, what's behind the hand, bone. So let's take that to cells. Let's take it to where we were.
What is it again with the hand?
So you look, you look at your hand. Okay, what's behind the hand? All right. Bone. Okay, what's behind the bone? Tissue. Cells. So we get down to cells, right? What's behind the cells? Atoms, etc., etc. Okay, what's now? So I keep going. So I call this cellular unwinding, right? So we keep undoing it. So we end up with what? Okay, we'll get to waves and particles, maybe, right? We'll go back. Then what's behind that? And we reach. If we keep playing that game. To save our listeners about 40 minutes. But if we keep playing that game, we get at kind of everything and nothing.
Yeah.
A space God, some people will call it. Some people call it quantum soup. I don't know, but you can't go any more, because if you then said, oh, well, what's outside of that? Well, there must be something that holds the something that's outside of the something. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. And this question has been...
These paradoxical questions that cannot be grasped.
Exactly. It's gone on forever. But my point is, you would end up, as Alan Watts describes beautifully, as the kind of I'm paraphrasing, Alan Watts does much better than me, but this is how I framed it. Everything and nothing. We're back at yin and yang, which can only be contextualized by having its opposite. So I can only know light by having dark enter. Now we get into religious symbology, Adam and Eve, devil and the hell, just metaphors.
Metaphors, yeah.
Metaphors.
Yeah.
And Joseph Campbell's work, that's why I love writing fiction, because I've realized this is what we're doing here. I'm just hiding it in a story.
Yeah.
And by writing symbology in metaphor and storytelling, we're kind of already combining brain science, religion. Yes. I'm not talking about writing parables. I'm just saying by just that act, we're communicating. And you see that all these people have asked the same questions, and we end up, which brings us back to then what I was saying before, is that if we go back to all and nothing, right? I've just stripped a few thousand steps, but forget the scientists, forgive me.
To the core of reality, basically.
Yeah, exactly, we've cut out the noise. Well, we end up that potentially everything is possible. Potentially. If everything is... so then you just go, well, let's just zip forwards. Well, if everything's potentially possible, why can't I not write this is just mundane, right? But just to bring it back today, why can't I write a best-selling book? Why can't I win the world championships? Why can't I start a podcast? Well, actually, you can. Oh. And now we're back to 9 to 5 stuff, into the more kind of, why don't I do what I love? So the science and the religiosity is not, they're kind of the same thing. Just different descriptions.
Yeah, I mean, we love science because we're biologists, so we love the scientific method. So for us, kind of religion, we have some issues with that. We consider ourselves spiritual, non-religious, spiritual.
I'm the same.
Yeah, because like for me, it's just about the openness. Yes. And sometimes religions tend to do, some of them tend to close themselves up, to have this circular, and they are dogmatic. Yeah. So what's special about scientific method is not which so many scientific breakthroughs are amazing. What I love the most about it is the method itself. Yeah. It's non-dogmatic.
Well, you're playing the game and you're testing the game. You're putting the players on, and you're finding out, you guys can't pass very well, or we better work on that.
And you take responsibility.
Exactly.
You take the responsibility.
But it is still any even the scientific method is still limited by its boundaries.
And by humans, because humans do the science.
Exactly.
So I totally agree. I just last point I wanted to comment on. We will go on and go on.
Sorry.
But no, it's perfect. It's exactly our jam. It's lovely. Last thing is the openness. That's why on my value compass of reason, that's why there was openness and non-dogmatic thinking. Because openness means that, okay, I have some theories which are really proven up to almost 100%. For us, nothing is 100%. It's maybe 99.999. Sure. That leaves a space for openness, because I never know. I still have, back again to the subjectivity, I still have only my subjectivity. So therefore, okay, I perceive this fraction of reality. I have my history. I have this experience and that experience. But it doesn't mean that I know everything, that I will ever know something for 100%. So that leaves us always a space for openness. And I think this is a beautiful connection between scientific method. You're trying to break the frames, break the things, to build them up stronger. But you have to break them, and if to break them, you have to think differently. And we know from history that many ideas died after the scientists died, after the big names died, because they were too close to their idea, and they got locked onto it, and they weren't open enough anymore. That's fine, that happens. And then there is this natural process of the universe that will filter out the ideas, and more relevant one will come up, and I love this. So
Shunryu Suzuki, one of the great Zen teachers, Zen mind, beginner's mind. The idea that in the beginner's mind, the potential is always open, and the master's mind, there is none. And I see this, I cannot agree with you more in openness. And as an educator, I say this, and to bring it back down to more kind of mundane levels for me, as a fighter, I will never ask my students to do something I have, one, not done, or two, am not doing or prepared to do. I cannot bear, I'm sorry to get grumpy, teachers who play the whole, talk the whole theory, especially in the martial arts world. It's horrific, it's egoic, it's awful. So if I haven't done it, I will tell you, I don't know. I don't know. I'll send you somewhere who might know, or I will be testing it with you. Now, I'm not suggesting I'm going to be combating till I'm 70, but I will all have had that experience, because for me that is openness. For me that's the scientific method. I know it's not officially, but it's that version of the scientific method. And I will find out, I will say to you in competition, that won't work. Don't believe me though, go to the competition, we're back to playing the game, and then you'll see, and they'll come back and go, didn't work. I told you. But you've got to have that experience. That's got to fix in your brain. And so openness, I agree with, it's so important in education in any level. Writing, casting, education, it's vital.
Openness and beginner's mindset, it sits really deep in our fundamentals, like in our mindsets, how we want to approach the world. So that's beautiful. And I would like to ask you one of the last questions. I won't sleep if I don't know. What is the story behind strawberry cheesecake?
Strawberry cheesecake. So I reached this, so I'm on the 88 temple pilgrimage, right? We're in there in Japan. And I'm reach this deep state of meditation, and that comes because you're on your own a long time, often walking kind of 14, 15, 16 hours a day. It's boring. There's nothing else to do. So you find that you have a lot of space, and you very often, because of the walking as well, I think, you drop into these meditative states or hypnotic states. Fine. In those states, you touch this bigness I was talking about, the all or nothing, because there's nothing else to distract you from that. So it's kind of deep meditation. Great. So while I'm in this all or nothing, thinking there's a potential for anything, I start playing with the idea. Well, okay, if this is true, scientific method, if this works, well, let's start manifesting stuff. If thought leads to creation, think of a building, write the plan, build the building, fine, then it should work, right? I should be able to do the Yoda stuff. That should work. So I start with little things. Okay, I said earlier, I need the toilet. Find a toilet. Fine, but that's not a big deal, right? You could find a tree anywhere or do it. Fine. So it worked a few times. I'm, by the way, naturally skeptical. I'm not an easy sell. I much prefer your side of the table, right? Where you're kind of open but questioning. I'm not an easy sell. So then I start upping the game, because I'm like, well, that doesn't really test my kind of, pilgrim scientific method. So what about the most random thing? I'm in the middle of a bamboo grove in Shikoku, right? Nothing. Strawberry cheesecake then. If whatever you are, God or, quantum soup or the universe, is this supplier of all things Yoda, strawberry cheesecake. Off you go. Good luck. And then I just carried on walking. Forget about it, right? That was one of the things I found I needed to do, by the way, was let go, which when you're walking is easy to do, but that's another story. I don't know how long I've been walking, but I kind of, the bamboo grove stops. It doesn't just gradually fade out, it stops, like it's some sort of weird matrixy thing. And I come out and I'm at the start of a small town, a road. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. walk along the road, and I see this shop on the left with I remember it as clear as day, a yellow, like a cover.
Neon.
Yellow hoarding, right?
Okay.
And I walk past, and I'd forgotten about my weirdness, right? I look in the window, and one tray is one slice of strawberry cheesecake. And I was like, you are kidding me. You are kidding me. I went in and bought it. I did this game a few more times until I stopped because I frightened myself. We're back to responsibility. I started to realize, careful what you are putting in your brain, because be very careful. And that really did. That's why that responsibility thing really stuck home, because you think, be very careful what you wish for, which led me to believe, are we creating our own futures of what we think? But the thing is, we don't know what we're thinking, or we're not paying attention. And pilgrimage gets you to see it, because that's all you got going on. And I stopped, because I was like, whoa, back up. That's a little bit too scary for me. And then I played with it more as years went on, and and I call it universal requesting. I don't know what you would call it in science, but you make a choice, you pick your line, stuff happens. I don't know how that happened.
This is interesting because few people actually told me about similar experience.
Okay.
And I've
good. I'm not completely crazy. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, I've had similar ones, but not this extreme. But so first of all, in science, in brain science, I will go. You said cognitive bias, basically.
Is it the same sort of thing?
Yeah. You tend to see in the world wherever is represented physically in your brain already.
Yeah. Okay.
So right now focus on anything metal here. And suddenly, wow, this pops up.
And that's how mentalists do their, Darren Brown do their tricks, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's like when you buy a red car, suddenly that's the only colour car you see. You're like, what, has everyone got a red car?
That's the example that we always give on the workshops and stuff like that. So that's one thing, and everyone can experience it. You just said it. The example with the car, example with someone seeing this on YouTube, and I can see, check out if there's, people. Flags maybe, flags, boom, two flags there. Yeah. So that's one level. And now you go into time and space, basically. You add time to it.
Yeah.
So you wish for something.
Yeah.
I mean, it might have been a dessert or a cheesecake.
Yeah.
This is really specific. Yeah.
And I did that on purpose to make it kind of
random.
It couldn't be vague. It can't be a toilet, because that's not. I mean, it's not much of a challenge. Strawberry cheesecake, right? What in Japan? Why? How?
Yeah. Usually people go with something not so random, and it's fairly possible. Yeah. For them to, and they were like, oh my god, I found it, but it was just their brain. It might have been the same thing for you, because there's this thing that there's 8 billion people in the world, and this just might happen. As a coincidence.
Yeah, just
but to be fair, I would say, wow, coincidence? I think not. That kind of meme.
Yeah.
I would say that, but also I'm totally open to the possibility. Yes, it was just a coincidence, and for me, this is still more probable option than something else happening. Yeah. But I'm totally open for it to be something else. But for me, it's just I can still explain it in ways of proving it in scientifically.
And that becomes then this interesting kind of discussion.
That's
but
perfect.
My life since then has become a scientific method to keep testing my own book, to see, does it work in this circumstance? Oh yeah, okay, it's another this circumstance, until for me I reached a threshold where it might not be provable, but it was provable enough in my life to know that I could trust it to build the life I wanted.
Yes. And this is so important, because people tend to go to the esoteric ideas sometimes, maybe the secret and stuff like that. Yeah. That might be even dangerous sometimes. Yes. Because
that's the spiritual porn I'm talking about.
That's the spiritual bypass as well. Yeah. This is a problem. That's why we say, your mindset, what thought you put into it, what you want, your intention.
Yes.
It's one of the most important things in your life.
Yes.
But not in any esoteric idea. Just by sheer neuroscience.
Yes.
Just by sheer...
And that's fine, right? I don't need it to be a god.
Exactly.
I just need it to give me the results I want.
So that's what I wanted to say.
Sorry.
It's useful.
Yeah. Yes.
We come back to if it's useful.
Yeah.
So I would suggest I do it in my life, and I think that's a reasonable method to do, or whatever method mindset. Well, I try to get myself and cultivate the best possible mindset for me to succeed.
And we're seeing this in sports everywhere.
Yeah,
I told you, in the day before, when I was playing tennis, visualization was nothing. But go back to the Jamaican bobsled team. But that was because they couldn't play the game properly. So what's the next best thing? And I don't think they knew that. So you visualize it. But I told you, my son plays for Wasps. He plays pro rugby, and I sat in on seminars, and mind skills, visualization skills are not as big. I'm not going to say that, but they're a proper thing. They're a proper thing. And you think, of course, what goes into your mind. Now, we don't have to make it weird for it to be useful. And you guys clearly are not making it weird, but I'm talking about my side of the fence. We don't have to be weird to make this useful for everyone's life.
So just one last thing to that. How to, where's the signal? For me, the signal is find what's useful, use whatever intention, whatever you feel like, but think about it. Think about it a little bit. Okay, what happens if this doesn't work? What happens if
And which word are we back to? Responsibility.
Yes.
Every
it's
time.
Perfect.
You got to take charge. It's your life.
Yes.
You're gonna lose it at one point. We're back at responsibility.
And that nothing is 100%.
Thank you.
Matt, what message would you like to send to our listeners?
I say to all my guys, right, I would love, however we get there, brain science, spiritual science, whatever you want to call it, I would wish for everyone that when you wake up in the morning, you love what you do. You spend a lot of time at work. So I know, and I know you guys, you do your work and you love it, and it radiates in you, right? And that's good for everyone. That's good for everyone. I love what I do. And I would wish that for everyone, even my enemies. I'd love them to sit at their workspace and just love it. Because what's the other option? You just sit in this kind of languishing grey, doing, well, if you want to, knock yourself out. But if I have a wish for you, it's that. And whatever tools you use, the science tools, my kind of metaphorical tools, which I think we're probably saying the same thing, right? I would wish that for all people. Yeah.
Thank you. I have one last question for you. And it is, did you find meaning of life, or are you still looking for it?
Or in your life.
In your life. Not like general meaning of life, but in your life. Did you find a meaning?
No. My meaning is I wake up, I like what I do, my decisions are based on, would I have coffee with these people if there was nothing on the table? If it's a yes, we have a meaningful conversation. If it's no, honest to God, that's what I do. If it's no, I walk to the next person. And that is my meaning of life this week. If we do this podcast another time, I'm not saying, remember, I've been a tennis player, shiatsu therapist, fighter, author, I have no idea. So every time my life changes, my meaning changes. So no and yes, maybe.
Perfect. Matt, thank you for this.
Guys, I have
a lot of
enjoyed
useful information.
every single second. I am honoured to have met you both. I have loved every part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. And to people out there, buy Matt books, because
don't buy my book. Go and do the pilgrimage yourself.
Nice one.
If you want to buy it, fine. It'll give me extra coffee. But mostly, seriously, play the game yourself. You don't need my experience and my description of it. I mean, buy the book anyway. Just send me the money. Send me the money.
Exactly, and don't buy the book.
Don't buy the book, and just but play the game yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Come up with your own 9 lessons, 8 lessons, whatever it may be. Ultimately, that's the only thing. Play the game.
Everything is going to be in the description. Thank you so much. If you wanna support us, share this episode with your friends, with your family, dog, sister, brother, mother, father, grandfather. Yeah, everyone. This is the best way to support us and to support Matt as well. So again, Matt, thank you so much for this conversation. It was incredible. I'm speechless kind of, because we come here to the festival. We didn't know your name.
Oh, great. I'm the most famous tennis player you've never heard of.
Yeah. well, there's so many people in the world. Right? And but 2 days before the festival, we didn't know if we were going to come or not.
Okay.
Now we come here, we explore people. I meet you, and we kind of vibe together, and you do this and we do this, and it's cool. And then we create this kind of conversation, something that has never been done before. We've never talked before on the show or something, and create some new thoughts, new ways of thinking, maybe new concepts. Now the concept of responsibility that leads to responsibility. Oh my God!
Yes.
Wow.
We need to patent that.
Yes.
We need to steal it from where we got it.
Yes.
But seriously, and those things just they happen, right? I don't know how you'll frame it in different explanations to me.
Yeah.
But
Perfect.
they happened,
Yeah.
and we're here.
Thank you so much. And this comes thanks to Frederick Imboswell, who was guest yesterday, who was guest on this show as well. Thank you so much for your time, Matt. And in the future, hopefully meet again.
Definitely.
We'll record another episode. And
100%.
links are going to be in the description of this show. And you guys have a beautiful day. You, Matt, to enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much.